Hello, hello. Happy Sunday and welcome back to the UpSet podcast. We're so happy that you tuned in this evening. And of course, I'm not alone. I have a few other friends with me. Let's bring them on at this time. Hey, guys.
Hey, happy family. Happy
Yes,
family.
yeah.
Now we're
Happy
friends. We're friends.
Sunday.
We were the
Yes,
favorites. This is
friends,
the gang that we
true.
friends. Okay.
Yes, anything endearing. That's what all of you are. But welcome to our listening and viewing audience. We thank you for joining us back here on the UpSet podcast. We are live this evening.
Live,
which we love because we get to interact with you. So don't forget to share this. We have a very important topic coming up later. And we think a lot of people will need to be made aware of the things that we're going to share this evening. But how's everybody been this week? It's been kind of a busy. I don't know if maybe it's just me, but I feel like ever since we talked about slowing down, please that up. Well, I'm like, what is this?
Mine did speed up. It just never changed. And I was like, oh man, I'm just not learning. I'm not learning.
Yeah, I know. At least the weather got a little better this week. I have to say, it got a little warmer. We got a few days of warmth in there.
The sun came out. That was nice. Because remember, it was so rainy from the storm.
Right. Hi, Yanni. Is that? Thanks for tuning in.
That's Yanni that I met yesterday. Nice to see you, Yanni. Again.
That's good.
Yeah, Pat, didn't you run into somebody? One of our podcast viewers out there.
I was trying to be slick by trying to find the name, but I was in Atlanta at Elizabeth. I'm going to say Elizabeth Davis, which is Danny Davis' wife. And bumped into Vashti Ashley Merrick. We took a picture together. She said that she wanted me to take a picture with her.
You out there being podcast famous, huh?
Yeah. That's good. I'm sure she liked y'all better. She just had to bump into me at the beginning.
And the ATL, we appreciate all of our viewers from all over. We know it's not just within AAC territory.
She wanted to let us know that she's an Allegheny East baby. That's what she
wanted. Roots are with AAC. That's good. That's good. Once AAC, always AAC, as we say. We don't let anyone go. We claim them all. Anything else happened this week worthy of noting?
I think I'm a little bit mad at the Arab nations taking away the gas. Did you see that? 2 million gallons a day. So that's why our prices are going back up.
I noticed it right away. I was like, wait a minute.
Quick. Yeah.
Gas prices went up. And then I said, what's going on in the world? And that's where I found my answer.
Well, I'm on that story. I'm more upset with our president fist bumping the prince in Saudi Arabia when he wouldn't take responsibility for the death of that journalist, who was an American citizen, by the way. So that's a lot of people didn't like that. They saw him fist bumping this guy when during his campaign he said that he was going to make them the pariah, the pariah that they are.
And now they're fist bumped.
Yeah. The other thing, kind of a downer. I wish I had some good news. That terrible tragedy in Thailand with those students.
Yeah.
And what makes it even more horrific, because we see this in this country all the time, but they were not shot; they were stabbed.
Yeah.
How do you do that to
brutal
30 students?
Wow.
And
he was a former police officer. He's just
disgruntled. I think he may have been terminated recently.
A year
but that just goes to show you that the adversary is global.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just horrible. You're right. I hate that the news is so horrible. What about the sports fans out there? That seems to get people excited. I'm not really a sports person. I don't know what games were played today and what people are rooting for. But...
Well, before I came here, the Eagles were winning over the Cardinals.
Oh, I was just with some Eagle people, so I'm sure they're shouting.
And we're at 4-0 right now.
All right. Go Eagles. EAGLES. So if you're watching us instead of the game, thank you. Or both of us at the same time.
Probably not. They're probably not here.
They catch the replay. Okay. All right. Well,
let's hope they win the game,
Yeah. Let's hope they win. Cool stuff. Of course, we're missing two of our crew members. We shouting them out. Oh, Yanni said the New York Giants finally won a game. Finally. Oh, those Giants.
Yep.
We're getting some more stats in here. 31-8. The Buffalo Bills killed Pittsburgh. Okay. All right.
Hey, what was Pastor Grissom's thing for us called If It's Sunday?
If it's Sunday, it's the UpSet.
It's the podcast. Yeah.
Yes.
I like that. I like that.
See, we made, Rodney, you've been asking for the t-shirts. That might be what we put on them, if it's Sunday.
That's a good idea.
See, we had to wait for that line. That's why they hadn't come out yet. So now that we have the line, we can go ahead and work on producing that. He said, all right. Yes. All right, guys. Well, we're not going to belabor our pre-talk here because we have a very, very, very important topic. I kind of given you a hint behind me, as well as you may have seen it in the advertisement for tonight. This is a very important topic to us because we recognize the importance of the church, kind of leading out in these types of discussions. And we have back with us, she was with us last year, and we wanted to bring her right on back because we had such a great time last year. And that's Dr. Kesslyn Brade Stennis. Hi, Dr.
Welcome. Welcome.
I'm going to move us around here a little bit.
Good to be here. Hey, family.
Yes. Hello. Thanks for being here
just
again.
Pencil me in every October. Just put me in the game, coach. Put me in the game.
We want to use permanent ink, not pencil. Permanent ink.
And for those who are meeting you for the first time, Dr. Kesslyn, tell us a little bit about your background.
Well,
she's a preacher.
I'm an Allegheny West baby. There. And I actually have been doing quite a bit of work in the area of domestic violence for, I think I started in 1997. I was working at Oakwood College at the time, and we had gotten a grant to do some domestic violence work in 5 northern Alabama communities to bring awareness about domestic violence in the South. And during the time when we got that grant and we were doing that work, and two young ladies in my own faith community were killed in one domestic violence incident. And from that point on, my research and my work has been connected to in some way violence, and not violence and women's empowerment. Not that women are the only survivors, i.e. or victims of DV, but my work has been connected to that since then. I have a PhD in social work. I have an MDiv and an MSW. And so my formal research for my dissertation was on domestic violence and faith community leaders. And I wanted to know how many of them have experienced some form of domestic violence. And so that's just my kind of my academic background and why I reach out to my friends and say, hey, it's DV month coming up. Can I join you all in your work? And I'm so glad to be here. So thank you for having me, family.
Thank you. Thank you for coming back. Pastor Marlene is going to lead us out in our discussion tonight. So go ahead, Marlene.
Well, it is always an honor to have you, Dr. Cass. It is just our joy. And we know that you have a lot of knowledge concerning that. And so I just want to say hello to our listeners. You guys know I've testified many, many times that I was a victim of domestic violence. And we were Seventh-day Adventist members, right? Yeah. And so sitting and looking happy every Sabbath, right? But after we just fought that morning, and then we go to church and we play the role of being a happy family. So I always tell my church, you can't fool me. I can spot you. I can spot you out real quick, because there's a certain behavior that one who is an abuser, whoever that is, that they display. You could see that system of control. But I just want to share with you before I set Dr. Cass free. There's a definition of domestic violence, just a summary of it that I want to share with you. And it says domestic violence is a pattern of abusive behavior in any relationship that is used by one partner to gain or maintain power and control of another intimate partner. Domestic violence can be physical, sexual, emotional, economic, or psychological actions or threats of actions that influence another person. We know it can even be spiritual. How some people use the script. Yes, and verbal. Yeah, verbal. I didn't have that in there. And verbal, and how people will use the scriptures to make you feel guilty, to try and hold and control you in that manner. And so on today, I believe in people being set free from bondage. I don't care where you are, whether you're in the church or out of the church. I believe in us being free, because God calls us to peace, and he didn't call you to live in turmoil. And what really gets me is when people tell you, you got to stay, and they're living in peace, right? And you're fighting for your life every week, and they try to make you feel guilty. So on today, we want to let you know who Jesus really is, and that's not him. And so Dr. Kess has a lot of information, and we're just going to have her start. And Dr. Kess, I want you to if you can start with the church, because a lot of abusers hide out in the church, and we see the way that they treat their family members. So sometimes they put on a really holy facade, but we want people to be free, right? We want them to be free, and we don't want you to feel guilty of desiring to be free. If you ladies and men can hear me on today, because let me tell you, once you get that peace, you never want that peace to go away, right? People say you're getting married. I said, not unless I can keep my peace. I'm not trading my peace for nothing. I don't care how cute he is. No way, no way. So Dr. Kess, take over for us, and let's talk about how this thing affects people in the church.
So I think it's important for us to recognize that people are people, whether they are in the church or not. People have more in common than there are than we'd like to acknowledge. And unfortunately, domestic violence, domestic abuse is one of those commonalities that cross the lines. Unfortunately, there are some statistics that would suggest that the incidence of domestic violence, this even hurts me to say, man, the incidence of domestic violence in the church is higher than the incidence of domestic violence of people who are not affiliated with a faith. And we have to really question why that is. I believe that a part of the reason for that is because we really don't teach people freedom, Sister Pastor. We don't teach people freedom. We teach people to be submissive, right? Not mutually submissive, but submissive. We teach people to obey, right? We do a really good job at teaching obedience. We teach people laws and rules, none of which involve the fact that God created us to be beautiful and we are the apple of God's eye. I'm going to write a book, and if anybody steals the idea, I'm coming for you. But I'm going to write a book called listen to Pat. Listen. It's going to be called Deficit Theology. We really teach deficit theology. Wow. The fact that we are born in sin and shaped in iniquity. So we train people from early years to be less than what I believe God has called us to be. We set folk up. This man, I'm feeling a sermon coming on. we set people up to be victims in a lot of ways. We don't teach an empowerment theology. We don't teach a theology that says you are wonderfully, fearfully, and wonderfully made. We don't teach that you're the apple of God's eye. We teach in many cases that we are sin laden. And I'm not suggesting that we don't have sin, but Jesus died to free us, right? And we don't oftentimes we don't get to that place. And so the church ends up being a place where perpetrators are safe perpetrating, and victims, survivors are taught to simply survive and be victims. And that's what happens far too often. I believe the more conservative the faith tradition, the higher the incidence of abuse, not just physical abuse, but abuse holistically. Right. I could go on, but that's a place for us to jump in and get started.
Dr. Kesslyn, let me ask you, in the church, is there a formal program that is either introduced or can be introduced in the church to deal with this subject other than in October, on a regular basis, not only in our churches, but our church schools and our youth program? I just think that if we make it our priority to talk about this as early as we can, that might help, at least in awareness, that someone, a young woman or a young lady is being victimized or they're being groomed, because you would think, oh, this wouldn't happen in the church. But shouldn't we equip our young ladies and young men for this kind of situation that could come upon them?
Absolutely. Gosh, where do I start? You ask if there was a program. Teachers are trained to identify certain red flags, certain warning signs. I'm not sure. I literally am not sure that there is a program that is age appropriate, right? Chronologically age appropriate. So if you all know of a program, I would love to see it in the chat. I do know that there is a bystander intervention program called Green Dot. My colleagues and I, Dr. Kathy Purnell, Helen Fishel, Renee Fentress Stevenson, and I developed a program called START 20 years ago. And we do trainings when asked. And please invite us to come to do these trainings. We would be glad to do the trainings, but I don't know if that has been enough. In fact, it needs to be ongoing. It truly needs to be ongoing. I was called by one of my children, maybe 3-4 weeks ago. And my child said, "Mommy, can you talk to my friend?" And I said, actually, let me just be honest. My child said, "Mommy, I'm trying to reach this person because I know that they're a social worker." And I said, "I'm a social worker." What in the world? She said, "No, Mommy, you're not that kind of social worker." But in the end, she said, "Mommy, I need, can you talk to my friend?" And her friend, who is 11, had been experiencing abuse in her home. And so I had to marry my mommyhood, right, with my mandate as a reporter to make sure that this child had what she needed. And thankfully, she'd already begun the process of speaking up for herself. All of that to say, Chuck, I'm not sure that there are enough programs to meet the needs, but hopefully there are more safe people. In that moment, I was a safe person. Social worker, my child. I was a safe person for the young person to talk to, and we need more safe people in the church. I'm going to give a shout out right now to my church, Capitol Hill Seventh-day Adventist Church, because we do have social service ministries and a counseling center connected to the church. So there are designated safe people and safe zones for people, young people and older people, to get the support. But there are just not enough of us there. That was a long answer to your question, Chuck.
Yeah, and
our
I know
pastors. I'm sorry, just a quick follow-up. Are pastors trained?
No, not usually.
Okay, that answers.
No, pastors are
that
not
answers
trained.
a further question. So we'll just let it go.
Chuck, to what? Chuck, to
how to handle
trained to not only detect but to respond.
They sent us, remember we had to go to a workshop seminar, Pat, a couple of years ago on domestic violence in the church. And then they sent us a book or something so that we could start training our people. I think it is definitely up to us, and it hasn't been an ongoing thing.
That's it.
Right.
The word
it hasn't
is
been
ongoing.
Right. It hasn't been that.
Yeah.
But
and it has to be ongoing.
Right.
It has to be ongoing.
Because I was going to bring out the the North American division. I think it's North American. It has the End It Now.
That's what it's called. End It Now. It was through the NAD. Yeah.
Right. And I know that every once in a while they have these initiatives, like you were mentioning, Marlena, but like you said, it's not frequent enough, because I'm thinking about how we had this conversation about domestic violence last year. Between last year and now, so many people have been introduced to it for the first time. When we were talking about it last year, it may not have even been in their sphere or their space, but by now they know someone or several people who may be in that situation. So I'm saying we can't wait a whole year to put emphasis on these things, because people's lives are daily being affected by this type of abuse. And how can we make this just as commonplace as our health nuggets in church?
And shout out to my friend Chanel. She sent some good stuff online.
Yeah.
I know for me, there's shame that the person feels, and you don't want anybody to know you're going through that kind of stuff, and so we have to get to a place where we don't care what people think. You know what I'm saying? You gotta just not care, right? And now, even they're saying post COVID, how their domestic violence has increased, suicide has increased, all those kinds of things. You got to talk to somebody, because there was someone who helped me that was another Christian outside of Adventism that had to help me understand that that's not what God calls us to. You're not stuck. You don't have to keep living like that. And
Marlena, I need to ask Dr. Kesslyn this question, and I know it's going to sound elementary. But what is domestic violence? I'm not even, and I'm not even trying to be funny to when you start to talk about domestic assault, some people may not consider it to be domestic assault because their daddy did it or their mama did it, or, they go through generations of assaults or abuse that it comes as a commonplace within even certain cultures. What is it?
Yeah. So there are lots of phrases that are connected here. There's domestic abuse, there's domestic violence, there's assault, there's intimate partner violence.
That's what I wanted to see with that. Go ahead.
There are nuanced differences. Domestic abuse or domestic violence includes everyone that is connected in a familial way, or at least a personal way, usually within a home. But it could be a boyfriend, girlfriend. Children experience domestic abuse. Elder abuse can fall under the category of domestic abuse or domestic violence. And it's not just physical. And I think, oh man, I felt some help coming, y'all. I think we don't talk about that part enough.
Right.
So the hit is not where it begins. It begins with the put down. It begins with the snide remarks. It begins with the embarrassing statements. It begins with it ends with the assault, the violent act. But that's not where it starts. it begins with the gaslighting, right? Making you question whether you are sane, whether you've lost your mind, whether you are seeing what truly is. That's where it begins, minimizing the person's self. And it ends in physical abuse. So we don't spend enough time on that front end work. And unfortunately, there are consequences on the back end. So Pat, to answer your question, it involves an act to gain power and control from one person over another person. And the techniques to gain control are, as Marlena said, are physical, they are verbal, they are emotional, that manipulation, emotional manipulation. It's financial, it's spiritual. Well, God said, right? There are any type of there are a large number of techniques that are used to gain control over another person. That's the simplistic definition.
Yeah.
I want to ask a question on victims' self-blame. Should that be part of our prerequisite in trying to nip this, or at least impact on this all of these mitigating factors? There is victim self-blame. It's my fault. This is why this is happening. And many times victims don't talk about it because they feel they're the blame. And I'm thinking that if we did have a program ongoing that talks about victims and the psychology of the victims, there might be somebody in the audience that says, got it, I'm no longer the blame. And now I can talk about this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
There's so much that we don't talk about, and that is a part of it. I call it paradoxical theology, right? To some degree, we teach that we should feel guilty, even though we teach that we shouldn't feel guilty. But some level of our theological underpinning suggests that if we don't feel guilty, then we're not really asking for forgiveness for our sin. Guilt is embedded in what we teach, and we have to separate. We say it all the time, but separate the sin that is from the person. God loves you. You may have made a mistake. You may have done something to be guilty about. And I'm not talking about abuse, but I mean holistically. If you're feeling guilty, there's still a place for you at the kingdom. And so I think we need to teach non-deficit, rather empowering theology so we can free people. The reality is that people do feel guilty, and we kind of heap coals upon that guilty feeling in the church. And
so let me ask you this one more. Let me just ask you this one thing. The abusers, are we as an institution empowering the abuser?
In some
way,
are we
doing that intentionally or unknowing? If an individual in the church, he could be an elder, just could be a church member, could be an officer, whatever. And if within the Seventh-day Adventist / Christian environment, they somehow feel empowered to do what they do, and that it's accepted by God, is that a real conundrum that we're having to deal with as well as an institution and as a people?
Absolutely. I mean, look in the chat. Absolutely. Right. I think one of the things that we can do to counter that is to rip the Band-Aid off and talk about the pain and what it is. It does not help anybody for us to be silent about the realities of abuse. It doesn't help anyone. It truly doesn't.
Doc, one of the problems that we also have, if you really want to get nitty gritty with this, is that if my elder, male or female, is abusing their family or someone in their family, it will be difficult with our friendship. And by the way, I'm being sarcastic, but it's true. You can't bring up these things, because if you bring it up, your friend is going to be upset that you're bringing it up in the church, knowing that you know what's going on. I'm talking about abuse, even in the church. It's hard to bring up. I'm not saying it's hard. See, that's the problem. There we go. We have a certain shame that's connected in bringing up these situations in order for a healing process to even begin. So when I look at church and you as the pastor, Marlena, we see everything and we know everything. We already know it. And I don't want to even get on this side, but what people don't tell us, God reveals to us, right? Mm-hmm. So we end up seeing these things happening, and we are afraid to bring that up, because we're going to be turned around if that happens, or you're not going to be the quintessential pastor if you start talking about these things. And I can see why it's never going to come up in the church the way it should, or when it does, it's an AY program that's only in October one time, and you'll never hear about it again until
women's ministry. It's always tucked under that banner of women's ministry, when we know that everyone experiencing domestic violence is
we're part of the problem,
definitely.
Not part of the answer.
Definitely.
And that's unfortunate. Because the old saying, well, it's not an old saying, actually, it's very applicable for today. You see something, say something.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that, Charles, because I was going to give a scenario that I was in several years ago. There was a leader in the church. It was a social event, but there were church people there. And I witnessed an encounter of a husband and wife, where, in my opinion, he was speaking to her, very inappropriately. The tone was off. It was very aggressive, and it made me uncomfortable to overhear it. And my instinct was to say, well, let me mind my business, but I'm thinking now, like, what should I have done? What could I have done in that situation? I'm literally witnessing this woman be verbally abused by her spouse, who is a leader in the church. And my instinct was, that's their stuff. Like, that must be how they communicate. Let me, stay out of it. What should I have done in that situation? Now that I'm looking back on it, so what should I have done that would have been helpful and received?
It was like,
you heard that little cry.
If you had the opportunity to have a private moment with her, maybe you see her going to the restroom, because that's where those conversations can take place, right? And you say, I heard, how are you? Because you've heard, you can't unhear what you've heard, right? Mm-hmm. So you don't put her in the position to have to acknowledge it. Sorry, I'm a doorbell, but you heard it.
Come in.
So you say,
I'm in
my house will get the doorbell. No. You say, I overheard that. I was a little uncomfortable, but I wanted to check in. How are you?
Yeah.
That sounds easy, Doc.
I know, because you feel embarrassed for the person, so you almost want to act like you didn't hear, so that they don't have that embarrassment of knowing that someone else witnessed this. You know what I mean? So it's like you're trying to protect their ego, but at the same time, as I'm seeing
you're
in the
protecting
chat,
their ego. But what are they losing? Because you're protecting their ego.
Doc, here's my biggest problem. If you see that in a public setting,
what's happening at home?
What's going on at home?
Right. Beat down, was getting the beat down. Yeah,
right. Absolutely.
That's what scared me.
And for those who hide out in the church, right? They're not hitting you physically, but they're tearing you down verbally and emotionally till you feel like you're nothing. And then they go to church and act like they praising God.
True. Let me answer Latasha's question. I think if I had seen something like, and by the way, I have seen this over the years. I remember at a church, husband came in. See, I'm smiling about what is wrong, right? It was it was turned. You expect the woman to get beat up, but the dude was getting beat up. All right. He doesn't believe in hitting women. He doesn't believe in this, that, and the other. And he's too embarrassed.
Yes.
To let someone know that his wife is abusing him.
Yes.
Right. And the truth is that I'm just gonna be straight up with you. I didn't know what I was doing back then, coming out of seminary. Hey, we just want a good service. But I think after the past 2 or 3 years, Latasha, if I was in your situation and a male watching a male do that, we gonna have to go to the corner immediately. That's now, though. That's not 4 years. That's not 3 years ago. That's not 4 years ago. This is now. Mm-hmm. I'll be able to do that because there's a bigger danger that's there. There's something huge. Whereas that person come up dead, and I'm going to go the distance, come up dead, and then we turn around and say, I saw all those signs. Mm-hmm. So what's different than where I was 3 years ago and where I am now is that you have to speak up immediately, not in front of everybody. You could just call a person over, especially male to male, and be like, yo, listen, what you doing? And he could hate me forever. It just doesn't have anything to do with it. You are probably saving someone's life. Mm-hmm. And if the husband, and it could go wife too, is doing that to the husband or husband doing it to a wife, what's going on with the kids?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It's making it bigger than
what they see.
I say speak up, Chuck. I say speak up.
And Dr. Kess, if we could help people right now, can you explain the difference in abuse and submission? Because I think, we get really confused. The men get confused as they think the wife, she supposed to listen to me, right? She do what I tell her to do, right? And we have to know, some things are abusive. And people, living in that way, hiding out, in the church, and very silent as what's been spoken, very silent, and people are screaming for help. So can you speak on that, submission or abuse?
I have a doctoral student who is actually doing her work on that specific topic. And she's also talking about the concept of mutual submission, which I believe is biblical. Mm-hmm. I believe that's what the scripture is talking about. Submission should never require a denigration of character. Mm-hmm. Ever. Submission should never require you to feel less than all that God has said that you are. Mm-hmm. Deficit theology, right? Submission should never make you feel like you are less than a child of God, ever. Submission is an act of service, not an act of denigration.
Ooh. There you go, ladies.
In line. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So there was a question in the chat.
And ladies and gentlemen.
Yes. Gentlemen. I'm sorry. Yes.
And Pat, what you said is so true in that, we kind of chuckle at it, but my research suggests that there are lots of men who are abused.
Sure.
Some verbally.
Actually, I was chuckling at you see Facebook user. I put Deficit Theology by Patrick Graham. It's a book that's coming out.
The lies we tell on air. The lies.
A stolen book, right?
Yeah, but go ahead. What you were saying? Let's bring it back to what you were saying about men that's abused.
Yeah, there are men who are abused. The research suggests that men are not abused as often as women. But that could be that men don't report as often.
Yeah, true.
Mm-hmm. I was doing a presentation last year for a church in London, and the data in in England suggests that men are abused on par with women. It's 50%.
Wow.
And it's some serious physical abuse in that 50%. So I don't want us to just think about domestic violence as a woman's issue to be spoken about in October and Women's Month.
Yeah,
Domestic violence
true.
impacts everybody, including those who do not identify as male or female.
Wow.
Wow. Yes, yes, yes.
Yanni said she knows a pastor who was smacked in the face with a frying pan by his wife. Men are getting abused inside and out of the church.
Wow.
That's the reality. That is the reality.
Let me ask.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to ask another, explore another angle. I was, in doing research for this show, I came across quite a bit of information. But what struck me is a young lady was explaining her situation. She's in her early 30s, and quoted. She is quoted in this article as saying, "I had a mindset of not having self-worth and feeling less than worthy of love and compassion. So I ended up getting into disruptive relationships." Speak on that, if you could.
Yeah, since we're focusing on domestic violence in church, I posted this. I've been posting every day of Domestic Violence Month. I post something, and the other day I posted that we have to do a better job validating and empowering folk. Man, it goes back to, I mean, I keep talking about it, but it goes back to our deficit-based theology. Since we're talking about the church, right? We really don't teach people their worth and their value. We teach people that they are valued when they are debased. And that's a challenge. So we raise people to think if you sin, God doesn't love you and you need to come down to the altar and repent. And I'm not suggesting that that's not, that's what we do. But where is the buildup? Where is the God loves you because you are God's child? It's not because of what you did, it's because of who you are. We don't do enough of that. So I think we have to do our part and building people up, and a person who is secure in their Christ and their godly identity will realize that anyone who makes them feel insecure or less than is not an equally yoked situation. It's not an equally yoked situation.
Yeah. And Dr. Cass, can you speak on, because this is major when people are going through at church and sides are chosen. And a lot of times the victim is the one who is belittled or pushed to the side. Can you talk to us? Because, in the church, people feel like, I'm just not getting involved. I'm just minding my own business. And people, they're already hurting. Now they're isolated. Can you speak to that?
And oftentimes the person who is doing the abusing is the charismatic, the one that everybody loves.
And all the friends,
they know how to wear the face, and they know how to look good and go to the altar and pray, and they can pray down some stuff. So it's hard for people to believe that that person could possibly be a perpetrator of abuse.
And sometimes they're the ones that's influencing the choosing of sides. Like, absolutely. I'm the victim, so be on my side.
Yeah, that's
exactly what church.
Behavior.
Yeah.
Gaslighting behavior. Yeah. Gaslighting. A part of gaslighting includes I call it the flip, right?
Yeah.
I am the victim. I narcissist. I am the victim. When all the signs show otherwise, but they are the victim. It is critically important for our faith communities to be trained and provide safe spaces for victim and perpetrator. Mm-hmm. It is critically important, but it is also critically important that we have accountability. Very important that we have accountability. So a person may confess that, yes, they abused someone last night. We are quick to teach forgiveness, and someone put it in the chat, and grace, but nobody ever talks about accountability. Mm-hmm. And nothing will ever change, my opinion, unless God works a miracle, which can happen, or a person is held accountable. That's when a victim or a survivor will feel even more safe from the person who has been abusing them and now is being held accountable for his or her actions. Mm-hmm. We have got to introduce that accountability piece if anything is going to change in our faith community culture.
Dr. Kesslyn, I'm sorry. I'm sure I'm not the first person who mispronounced your name. All right. If I say Dr. Kess, I just have a hard time saying it. But anyway,
Dr. Kess is fine.
All right.
Dr. K is all good.
Well, you heard it, official. Okay. The question I have is, now, we talk about this a lot, and more specifically, we're kind of laser focused on the church. These are real life threatening situations, can be. Can we be more prepared as a church, not just the institutional side, but as a people, to be a first responder to a very violent situation? Let me give you an example. Someone in the church, they're a member, this woman's a member, husband's a member, and you are very aware of physical violence. Would it be asking too much of the church to provide a safe house scenario for a member so they know that they can get out of immediate danger and be housed somewhere and supported by the church, members of the church, or some system that we could set up? I'm sure that there are a lot of people who will say, as long as I have a safe place to go where I won't be shamed, but I will be protected, and that the church would have a knowledge of not only the legalities and healthcare aspects of that, we might have more people running for the safe house if they knew it was there. So the question I ask is, can we prepare on that level? Should we prepare on that level?
We absolutely can, and we absolutely should. And there are churches who have safe houses. Not enough, but there are churches who have safe houses. When you mentioned that, it immediately took me back to, I'll call her Lauren. And I may have shared this story with you all before. When I was working on my dissertation, I met Lauren, and Lauren affirmed that my work meant something. I was telling her what I was doing research on, and she started crying, and I engaged her in conversation. She said that she had 3 children at the time. She was living with her boyfriend, the father of her children, and he had put a gun and lodged it in her mouth and had his hand on the trigger. And she said she was going to leave, and he said, if you leave, I'm going to kill you. And the barrel of the gun was in her mouth, and she stayed, and under the cover of night she left and went to the church, her church, and talked to the pastor. And the pastor, she was asking the pastor for help, and the pastor said, I can't help you because you're living in sin. She was living with her boyfriend. And the pastor said, I can't help you because you're living in sin. And I cried with her at the table. And I was just in just dismayed that this could be the case. I just was dismayed, but I'll tell you that I've met other, what did I call her? Lauren? Is that what I named her?
Yes,
I've met other Laurens since that time. And I believe, sorry, clergy, fellow clergy folk, there are certain professions where members of the clergy have higher rates of being perpetrators of abuse. Certain professions, clergy is one, police officers, psychologists, psychiatrists, doctors. And so sometimes the clergy person may not respond because they don't know, there's not training. Sometimes they may not respond because they're dealing with their own demons, their own challenges. And so we have to address that too. Our clergy folk need safe places to go to be able to process their own challenges. To answer your question, absolutely, we need to be a safe haven for people who have experienced abuse. Let me say this as well. There are not enough safe spaces for parents with older children. There are some safe spaces for parents with children under a certain age, but if you have a teenage boy, then you can't go into shelter care because you have a male child who is over the age.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. And so some parents, in this case, I'll say mothers, don't go into shelter care, even though it may be available for them, because their children then are not safe.
Wow.
So yeah, we have a lot of work to do. We already don't have enough safe spaces, but there are some groups that we have to do more to help. We have to.
Absolutely.
And parents with older children who need safe space, that's one.
Kesslyn, I wanted to, Dr. Kesslyn, I wanted to talk a little bit about.
Listen, you have known me all your life, so you can call me. You know what you call me.
Yeah.
We go back. We go back as long as she is old.
Back.
Okay.
Yes, that's true. You mentioned children. I know we talked a lot about spousal abuse on either side, but there is another burden too, particularly for me, with children who are victims of abuse. I know someone put in the chat how they had a coworker whose father would beat them to the point where they couldn't even come to work. This is a child. This is a parent beating a child, or a child being whether it's molested by another member of the family. And I wanted us to talk a little bit about that, because those are also hush things that occur within the church, and the children have an even harder time finding a safe place to, confide in someone, or where they could feel like they could share what's going on in their home. I saw some statistic about 50% of the sexual assaults occur in girls under 16 years of age in a domestic situation. So I'm wondering too, if we could talk a little bit about that, children who are experiencing abuse in the home, and what are we doing? Because a lot of the End It Now and all of that, those other things, they talk a lot about, what the woman should do, but what should children do? I mean, I believe sometimes children watch this podcast, may stumble across us. What do we do to protect our children when they've told a parent and the parent hasn't done anything to help?
Yeah, that happens more often than we want to acknowledge, because the parents are traumatized too. If the child is being abused, the parent's probably being abused too, and the parent doesn't know how to help him or herself, let alone a child. So I would encourage a child to talk to a teacher. Tell a teacher. Teachers, nurses, social workers, counselors, we are required to get you help.
Us clergy too, right? We're supposed
to. Clergy too. We are required to get you help. So if there's a person that you feel safe with, like my child's friend felt safe with me, tell someone. And oftentimes your parents may not tell you to tell someone. In fact, the parents probably say, if you tell someone, I'm going to hurt you, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to tell someone, tell someone that you trust, who is in a position to
because I'm assuming the kids are fearful that if they tell, you'll go back. Sometimes people want to verify with the parents. Well, I had so-and-so in my office and they said that this is happening. Is this true?
Yeah, that does.
And then they deny everything. The kid goes home and gets beaten for even trying to, you hear all these situations. You're like, oh, what can we do to be better at this?
It's interesting you say that. It's part of my research on this. And I was a little surprised to find that more and more healthcare providers in hospitals and ER who get, abused women, wounded, sometimes severely, into an ER. At one time, I understand, and Dr. Kess, you can tell me if this in fact was the case. Health hospitals, ERs, then they get involved. They'll patch you up. Okay. Yeah, we've stopped the bleeding. You can go home now. But now I understand that health care providers, hospitals, clinics, ERs get a little bit more involved on the social level with, why is this woman in my office bleeding or bruised? You can't go with the old, I fell down the steps line anymore. I mean, healthcare providers know what an accidental fall is versus being beat up. Okay. So with that reality, could it be that some folk won't even get medical care or go to seek medical care if they're badly wounded or hurt, because they know that healthcare providers, even law enforcement, are required to report that? And they said, oh, no, I don't report it. No, I don't need that grief, right? Could that also be a reason why some abused individuals just
don't talk to anyone?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not healthcare providers, social workers, pastors, teachers. Yeah. Some people don't seek help because they are fearful of what could happen if they seek help. So yes, that is a reality. That is a real fear.
So Dr. Kess, I want to ask, what can we do, male or female? You're in a situation, you don't know what to do. Can you share with us from the foundation? What do you do?
I'm going to give everyone a number to call. If nothing else, call 1-800-799-SAFE. It is the National Domestic Violence Hotline Helpline. 1-800-799-7233. Of course, you can always call 911. 988, I think that's the new number. But the domestic violence helpline number is 1-800-799-7233 or 1-800-799-SAFE.
Safe.
If I don't leave you with anything else, what can you do? SAFE. There's a training that my colleagues and I do. It's called START. 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 We travel. We've been doing this work for a long time, and we would be honored and glad to help save lives in your faith community. Just reach out,
okay.
and we'd be glad to do.
And how do we contact you, Dr. Kess?
You can go to my website, www.drkesslyn.com, and there's a request there. You can also email me at drkesslyn at the PhD Consultants. That's a lot.
That sure is.
but or contact you all. You all can find me.
So www.drkesslyn.com.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doc, I have one along with what you are giving us counsel on. If you are in the context of the Adventist Church, because that's where we've kind of focused, if you are a member and you witness something, what is your first responsibility? To report it to the pastor, first elder, your friend, call the cops? What, as a member that witnesses something or knows for sure, is certain that a fellow member is being abused, what should be that member's first action?
The hesitance is because every situation is different. But if that person is in immediate danger, please call 911. Please. Mm-hmm. If that person is in immediate danger, please call 911. There are some other things that we can do as a church, but I'll leave you with that. If your church has a social service ministry or a counseling ministry, or you know someone who's trained in the church, consult with that person. But please, I mean, to me, it's better to be safe than sorry. It's better to be safe than sorry. So I would call 911.
And what about us as clergy? If we feel someone is in danger, tell them you got to get out for your safety of you.
So
and
you have to
children.
let that person make the decision for themselves. Sometimes people choose to stay for a variety of reasons, really. But what we can do is empower them to say, listen, I know that this is going on. You don't have to confirm or deny. I know that this is happening. I want to tell you that I am here. Marlena, you can say, I've experienced this. Please make sure you can come to me. You can call 911. Here's the number. Make sure that you have copies of all important records. Have a little bit of cash stashed away. Have your medicine prescriptions. Like, you can empower them so when they're ready to leave, they have what is necessary to leave and be safe. But I hope that's helpful. I hope that's helpful.
That's good counsel.
Yeah,
very good counsel.
And this number, just for clarification, this is for someone who may feel like they're being abused and want help, not necessarily for someone who wants to report someone being abused. Correct? Somebody just wanted that clarification.
I would call that number for all things, because they can direct you.
Okay.
They can, but yes, this is a number, a safe number, but they can also give you information on next steps.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Ooh, this is every time we talk about this,
it's always a loaded topic.
Yeah.
And let me tell you this before, Pat, you got something to say?
No, go ahead.
It's so prevalent in church, guys, and I think we have to really be supportive and help people the best way we can. And a lot of times when I'm preaching, a little bit of this will come out, and there are people who will say to me, thank you for your testimony, or pass me notes. And I know they're going through, or they know someone who has. And people sit right, especially us as clergy, we have a platform, where we can encourage people to be safe and let them know that, it's good to get help. Just like Dr. Kesslyn was saying, you got to love yourself and not feel guilty if you want safety for you and your children, because God didn't call us to live like that. And don't let anybody misrepresent who Jesus is before you, because that's not Jesus. Jesus don't beat up on people physically, nor emotionally, nor mentally. He doesn't do that. And so I just, for me, when you stay, it damages the children. Because I remember, Dr. Kesslyn, you can help me with this. A lot of times they used to say that the males become abusers and the girls victims, but I don't know. I guess that can go either way. I don't know the statistical rates on that, but the children become damaged. And I know it's a lot of times people stay for finances, but I don't know. I remember this story. This one lady, there were actually people in the church telling her to leave. She had several children, and she just stayed with her husband, and he killed her. And then the children have to know that the dad killed the mom. That's traumatic.
It absolutely is.
Absolutely. I want to shout out. This is one of our pastors, who watches faithfully, Pastor Rodney Grissom. And he had a great thing that he plans to do, which is putting on his scrolled announcements something about this number. And I think that's something, we're always asking, what can we do? Even just putting it before the church outside of October, even creating programs for support,
ongoing.
Ongoing. It doesn't have to just be an October thing.
Yeah.
Just creating those safe places where we can. Go ahead.
We talk about in our training, we talk about what we can do. We can have a sermon. How many people have heard a sermon on abuse? Right? There are so many examples in the Bible, but we've not preached on it. We have Bible study on abuse. We have prayer meeting where we have a Q&A, a panel of experts to come in and talk about it. I love the rolling announcement on the screen or old school paper bulletins. I love putting contact numbers in restrooms, male and female restrooms. My physician's office has an announcement in the women's restroom. If this is you, call this number, right? Yep. There are code words that can be used. There's so much that the church can do within its own entity to address this issue. And those are just some of the things that we can do. Practically.
I saw someone earlier mention, maybe we need to take this topic of domestic violence out of the women's ministry banner and put it in family ministries, because it's affecting so many members of the family. And even when we have like marriage retreats and things of that nature, that needs to be one of the seminars. It's not just about improving communication. We need to hit at, those things even preventatively. What can we do to make sure we're not being abusive to our spouse? Different things that we can do to be intentional about addressing this thing year round, I think is so important.
Can I address one of the responses that are in the chat?
Sure.
There's a world outside of Adventism. I know it sounds frightening, but there is a world outside of Adventism. And there are people who are good Christian people who are there to support. So if the husband is the pastor and the husband is being abusive as the pastor, there are people outside of the faith, the immediate faith community who can help. So if at all possible, reach out. That number is critically important. You can go on the website. I've forgotten the website, but just Google domestic violence. It can take you to the website, and the website is protected. So a person who comes in after you to see what you Googled will not be able to trace that you've even gone to the website. There is support for you. There is support for you. Please reach out. Please reach out.
And
for God's sake, please reach out.
Right. And I think we have to continue to affirm the one who's being abused, because sometimes the courage is not there. Sometimes they're so beaten down that they don't even see the need to get out. They might just think this is just the way it's going to be, especially if their abuser is a pastor or church leader. And so I think it's very important for all of us to know that you're special and that you don't deserve that. I don't care who it is that's abusing you. You don't deserve that.
Absolutely. And I do think, just as Rodney said he was going to do the scroll, and Monte Cristo Duke is saying here in the chat, one of the small things that churches can do is simply to keep these numbers in the bulletin and these these websites in the bulletin at all times, because you never know when somebody is going to need that number or access to that website or that information. So that's a small thing. If we have any clerks here, or if you need to report to the clerk by Wednesday what your announcements are, I recommend we suggest this one, including this number for the abused to reach out. So, but great discussion. And this is the website, I think, Dr. Kesslyn, you were referring to, that people can go to for additional resources.
Yeah, there's another one. If I can pull it up before we leave, I will. But
sure. And we can always add it in the chat after the fact, or in our notes after we go off live. But
did you say www.thehotline.org? Is that what you had, Taj?
Yeah, that was the site that was associated with the number, but there are additional sites as well. That is it there.
All right. Dr. Kesslyn, are there any final words you want to say in summary as we prepare to close out?
Just know that God loves you more than anybody else. And the God who loves you says that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. You are the apple of God's eye. God loves you so much that Jesus went to the cross to die for you, so you don't have to die at the hands of anybody else. You are worth every bit of the blood that Jesus shed on the cross for you.
Amen.
So you don't have to stay. You can move in your own time. You don't have to deal with the physical abuse, the verbal abuse, the emotional abuse, the games that people play, the spiritual abuse, the financial abuse. You don't have to. You don't have to. There's help available. There's help available.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you so much. This is, great discussion for us to have. And I'm thinking, even as I'm saying, we should do this more than once a year. We may need to revisit this. Even if it's something that we mention periodically as part of our opening and closing of the podcast. I mean, I think it's just that important. People are living with this and dealing with this all year round, and it deserves some attention. So
thank you for having me. Listen, y'all gonna get me in trouble. I told y'all I have Gary Brown on live at 7. I know he's like, Dr. Cass.
Sorry, Gary.
Go ahead. Tell him I gave the pass. You'll be good. Here we are. Thanks, Dr. Kesslyn. We appreciate it.
He and I are going to have this discussion on a clinical level as soon as we get off.
Okay. All right. We're gonna release you. We appreciate you.
Right.
We also appreciate our audience. You all will sharing some knowledge in the chat as well. Thank you for that, because people will come and see your comments and get important information as well. And this is something I'm just kind of throwing out to each individual. When you say see something, say something. I mean, I think we've all learned that keeping silent doesn't really help. We may think we're trying to mind our business, but in doing so, we could be preventing someone from getting the help that they really need, or the advocacy that they really need. So, all right, guys, thank you so much. Don't forget this number scrolling at the bottom. Please make note of it. Share it as many places as you can. Thank you, Dr. Kesslyn, for joining us. And just a reminder to our audience, next week, we will not be we will not air a broadcast next week. We will be going through our constituency session. So you feel free to watch that. That will be streaming on our Facebook and YouTube.
What a boring Sunday night that will be.
Entertaining as a podcast, but nevertheless.
We hope not, right? We hope it's not as entertaining.
Hey, we may grab some.
What's going to happen, right?
But no.
Talk about abuse.
Don't want to be in the Jerry Springer situations.
Oh, mercy. Pray for us. So pray, church. But we'll see you back the week after that, where we'll actually have kind of our lingering thoughts regarding the session and how it impacts our conference going forward. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. Have a great Sunday, a great week, and stay blessed. We'll see you next time.
Amen. Be safe, family. Bye-bye.
Bye.